People think that you don't require paperwork when you become a content creator, but how much paperwork do you actually need to do? Let's get into it. So for anybody new at the channel, this has been my journey in the content creating sphere. 2021 through to 2022, I started experimenting with channel content and wound up with monetized channels, which as a result led me to creating Ginger Media Limited in July 2022. Over the course of these few years, I've managed to build a media company to an okay standard, and I've actually managed to get some clients. Now, some of those clients need to know what they need to do to start a podcast. More importantly, what legalities or paperwork you need. So for anybody going down this route, I'm going to give you some tips and some pointers around this. So first of all, why do people go into content creation over traditional media? Well, essentially it is the lack of paperwork. There's a lot more paperwork in traditional media than there is when you become a content creator. It's sort of the Wild West, but with it being such a wild west, to quote Will Smith, it means that content creators can be leaving themselves vulnerable to people trying to take advantage, trying to abuse your time, your experience, and more importantly, shafting you out of money that you are rightly entitled to. This can also apply the other way around, and the content creator could end up taking liberties with said guest. This is why there's usually two key forms that you need to have in place, with one bonus one that I'll tell you at the end of this video. So say you have a podcast, and you as a host are trying to get guests to come on said podcast. What do you need to do in terms of paperwork? So for guests coming onto a podcast, they're never usually a paid experience if they're at the same level as yourself. Most of the time, it's a quid pro quo situation. They come on for exposure, and you've got the platform to provide said exposure. But the guest could take liberties with you. Maybe they record the episode with you and they don't like it. Decide they want that pulled. Don't agree to it being shared on certain social media sites. And this can be an absolute ball ache if one of those social media sites is one that you use for regularly getting engagement from your core audience. This is why you need a guest release form, specifically a voluntary one. Guest release forms are pretty generic, but they cover a lot of ground. It's going to save you plenty of time and hassle. You can essentially make good drafts of these yourselves, but here are some key points you need to put in. You need a paragraph about consent to record, ownership of content, voluntary participation, and editorial discretion. This covers you in terms of the guest agreeing to come on to your podcast, that you as the podcast owner have sole ownership of said content, that the participation of the guest is voluntary and isn't expecting a financial reimbursement, and that you can share it on whatever social media platforms are appropriate for your podcast. If the guest does not feel comfortable signing it, then the interview cannot go ahead. All parties have to agree to what's in the form before anybody signs it. And make sure there are two copies, one for yourself and one for the guest. But say you're bringing on a guest that has more exposure than yourself, maybe a bit more of a well-known name, someone that is expecting to be paid for their service because it's going to end up giving you better exposure in the long term. This is when you need a paid talent agreement. Now there are some differences with this agreement compared to a voluntary guest form. You need to state the payment terms, the buyout of rights, and a notice of cancellation. Payment terms are pretty self-explanatory. You're paying this guest a one-off fee of whatever you have agreed on for their appearance on your podcast. The buyout of rights is crucial for you as the content creator. With you paying this fee to your guest, it means that you have full control and ownership of the recording, which includes distribution and broadcast on any social media platforms. And the cancellation one is a small but critical piece of information. So if the producer, so yourself, cancels within 48 hours of the recording, a kill fee of 50% of the agreed amount will be paid to the contributor, because the guest will have already devoted that time to come out to be a part of your podcast. So if you cancel within 2 or 3 days notice, that guest is entitled to some compensation. But crucially, in these agreements, it doesn't apply the other way around. So if the guest cancels on you within that time frame, they don't reimburse you, which I personally don't agree with, because I've known some guests to not even bother telling you on the day that they're not coming, and you've already hired studio time, equipment, paid for utilities, food, drink, all these expenses that a lot of people don't consider when doing a podcast. So it's something to potentially look at going forward. Now here's the final form that I was going to give you as the bonus if you stuck around to the end of the video. Say you're not doing a podcast in a studio. Say you want to go out on location. It requires one specific form. A location release form. This is where you get permission to enter whatever property or location that you're going to be doing your filming. The right of use, which means that whatever property that you're going to, they give you as a producer right to use that location. And identification. So you agree to enter that property and leave that property the same way as you entered it. Clean, tidy, otherwise you'll have to pay for any physical damages. It's not one that many people consider, but because so many people are now doing vlogs where they're out in the open, it is possibly one to consider if you are out and about, so you don't get in any trouble. There are a lot more forms that you need to do if you're going to go into more of a business side of content creation. And if there's interest, I may do a follow-up video on that. But if you, as a podcaster, are planning to get a guest in, these are the forms that you probably should have, just to keep yourself covered. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video, and take care.